Well, this is a Monday morning, and Pat McArt is sitting in the streaming sunshine, or is it the streaming rain in Donegal this morning?
No, it's actually, dude, I was outside there. I think it's about 14, 15 degrees. It's actually
Aye,
sort of, there's a warm breeze out there.
aye,
It's
aye.
actually nice.
Yeah, yeah, it's the
And
same
apparently
here.
this week, apparently we're actually starting to come into this sort of, what would you call it, summer weather. Apparently this
Oh,
week there's going to be a change of climate. We're going to actually, I think it's on Thursday, we're going to reach 17 or 18 degrees. That's
not
balmy.
not before time, not before time. It's been a long sort of a winter, and the temperatures kept down. That cold, even on a bright day, that cold cutting wind, not good.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cheer up. Let's look at some figures that you have sent me. And you're drawn by the figures with regard to the census and the comparative figures between people Catholic background and Protestant background.
I don't know. Way back in the 1980s, apparently the Catholic population boycotted the census and all the rest of it, and they said some of these figures were hidden. But the latest census seemed, and I don't know how they could reach these figures, but and now they're, I think it's 42% or 40% Catholic, 32% Protestant, and 8% undecided, no, who are of no religion.
Yeah.
That's a big switch round, and in other words, there are now considerably more Catholics. Now, of course, you always have to put in the sure the what's the word that you can't
Proviso.
equate one with the other. The proviso. Geez, I'm definitely a senior moment there. The proviso that just because they're 40% Catholics, that doesn't mean they're all going to vote for United Ireland in the
Well,
parliament. But
exactly the point I
but
was going
still,
to.
but it is, but Jude, it is still a milestone. Hey,
Hmm.
the point I think I'm trying to make is when, as you well know, you know it better than I do, actually, this state was formed. There was more than 60% of the population Protestant and Unionist, and around 30% uh, Catholic. And the whole idea was to create a state that, a bit like the Thousand-Year Reich, that it would last in perpetuity forever. Because the ratio was 2 to 1 or 1 to 2, whatever way you want to put it. One Catholic, two Protestant. For every one Catholic, there was two Protestants.
Yeah.
And the founding fathers, I presume, thought this would last forever. It
Uh,
hasn't, and
uh,
it's not. By the way, and I'm tying two or three things here together, but I think the reactions, the gratuitous insults hurled at Joe Biden last week by unionists, I think, that Bob Dylan songs, "The Times They Are a Changing." I think unionism realizes that big time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They can feel the ground shifting under their feet. Tell me this, though, Pat. I mean, this is the results, presumably, of the 2021 census.
That's
So
Yeah,
why are these figures only coming out now? I don't
I
understand
haven't a
that.
clue.
I thought, 2021 census, and it might take them a year to put all the bits together. But why didn't they just release all figures with the various headings for them? I don't get
Dude, I
that.
only read them last week, so I don't know where they've been hiding.
Does that not seem
Maybe that,
strange to you, Pat?
maybe I know, but they could now. I have to stand up. They could have been published somewhere else before, but
Well,
I
what
only
did we
noticed them.
both miss it now? We both of us would
Uh,
you would if you were on a site or looking at an article and there was a mention of the census, you would notice it. You definitely would notice it, and so would I, because your brain
Yeah,
works that
well,
way.
I'm holding up my hands. I don't know. Maybe somebody could turn around and say, "Wait a minute, these have been running around for a long time," or
Mm.
whatever. I don't know, Jude. All I know is I only came across them for the first time, I think,
Uh,
in fact, last Monday or Tuesday.
yeah, well, even they were around for the last good while. I mean, surely there should have been quite a bit of fuss raised about them.
Yeah,
They really are
yeah.
very striking. I mean, the first thought that comes to mind is if you're saying that there are, what was it? What did you say the figures were?
About 30% Protestants
Yeah,
and about 42%.
42% Catholic and 30% Protestant, and then there's some others who don't identify with either. And as you say, but take that warning that you're not necessarily going to translate those into nationalists and Republicans,
Yeah.
or nationalists and unionists. Um, do you think? I mean. Is it likely that we'll escape this terrible charge they're forever leveling? That if there is a border poll, that 50% plus one won't be enough? Do you think with these kind of figures that we could rest pretty confident that a border poll will be won by a significant margin?
No, I wouldn't go that far either, Jude, because there does seem, no, we'll call it the alliance effect. there
mm,
are a lot of people do seem to go into that middle ground. You
mm,
know, like it's like the wee girl I knew whose family were quite Republican, and one day she was chatting to her, and I said to her something about being Irish. She says, "No, I am neither Irish or nor British." She says, "I am Northern Irish." And I thought, Jesus, that's a, and she was a nice little middle class girl who went off to study law, as far as I remember.
mm,
So Jude, there might be quite a few people who think like her. Like, I always keep saying, everybody after the Good Friday Agreement and the Anglo-Irish Agreement and all that sort of stuff, the Catholic, the middle classes, the soft nationalists, as you call them, were in a nice, comfortable position. The days of discrimination were over. Housing had sort of been sorted out, and okay, they were still under a British system and a British rule and so on. But you could sort of put your head above the parapet and go on, and everything was going reasonably well. There were still, a significant number who wanted unity and who felt their Irishness was not being done. But there were a significant number who would say, "Look, we can live with this, and we get on."
mm,
And
mm,
then along came Brexit, and that
mm,
has really put the cat amongst the pigeons big time,
mm.
because it's total like simple thing, Jude. Dublin and London can't work together because they're. I think Brian Feeney on Friday put it quite well under article, or what, the second, no, the three strands, the second strands, the strand two, the north south, were predicated on both Britain and Ireland being in the EU, and the whole thing about funding and about cross border stuff and all the rest. That's not workable anymore, unless there's sort of a whole new sort of agreement reached.
Mm, mm. What about you say that you mentioned the Alliance Party. Do you think, I mean, eventually, if there is a border poll, they'll have to make up their minds one way or another, or at least the individuals within it. Uh, would you say that the Alliance Party is largely composed of people who be unionists in background, or would you say it's largely composed of people who be nationalists in background?
I would have said 20 years ago, it's the last party was unions with a small u.
Hmm.
I think these days it might be shifting more towards soft nationalists rather than,
Are you saying
uh,
that as members now, not in terms of the policy, but as membership, would be coming
as members. I
largely
should,
from?
like a lot of their candidates in recent times have been of the Catholic persuasion or
Hmm,
Catholic background.
hmm.
Even the names give that away.
Aye, aye,
So I presume, like there's, the 11 plus people, the people
yeah,
who passed the 11 plus,
yeah, yeah.
in the Catholic community. This society's been quite good to them. They've become the
Hmm,
doctors and the lawyers and the
hmm,
accountants and
hmm,
the,
hmm.
what would you say, the elite of society. This, the good old Catholics who succeeded, they almost became unionists because they
Yeah.
like this society.
But listen, the fact that there is a border poll and supposing that border poll were passed, it's not as if those doctors and lawyers and so on are going to lose their jobs.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no,
maybe they'll
no, no,
continue
not
in the
at all.
same position in society, almost certainly. And
Yeah.
to me, it seems strange if the majority of unionists or of the Alliance Party are Catholic slash nationalist in background. It seems to be inconceivable that there would be a border poll and that they would either stay at home or go out and vote for the union. Because in the United Ireland, whether they're lawyers or doctors or whatever, they're actually in a better position than they would be if they
Yeah,
were kept tied to Britain. Would you not agree with that?
yeah.
I mean, Britain is headed on a path that's not, it's just not going to get better, I don't think. Or if it's going to get better,
No,
it's going to take an awful long time. They are rubbing their hands with delight in Britain at the latest announcement that the economy is predicted to grow by 0.2% or something over the
yeah.
next year. I mean,
Uh,
compare that with the figures for the Republic and big difference.
and for Europe, the EU, yeah.
So
But
I
yeah,
would,
it was the only major economy that was predicted at one stage to go into recession.
sorry.
They think they're going to head that off by 0.2. Like, I'm sure you'll notice that big time in your pay packet or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the thing to be rejoicing at the fact that you're not going into recession, and oh, things are rosy. How rosy are they? Oh, not 0.12 or whatever it is.
But to take you on, I remember one time I went to a meeting. I was a young reporter in the Derry Journal. I think it was the only council meeting I ever went to. And I remember the SDLP. I didn't know a lot of the people there because it was the first meeting I was ever at, and nobody told me who was who. And I flew through the meeting, I couldn't figure out who was SDLP and who was the official unionist. They were very much off the same page. And and in fairness, some of the unionist guys were very modern. People like Jim Guy was very middle down the
Yeah,
road and very
yeah, yeah.
decent, and so on. And then you had, I think it was Len Green, an Englishman on the SDLP, and their views on a lot of things they dovetailed totally. They were in lockstep in just about everything. I presume there's a lot of people like that who would Northern Ireland is a place that they can live with. Now there are those on the left or in the nationalist community who still want to unite Ireland. There's the hard right on the unionist end who want Britain first. They'll nearly eat grass, and so on. But then in the middle, I think you've used the term. No, they'll nearly do anything. Oh, we don't want any trouble, so we'll live this. We don't really want this 50 plus one thing to work.
Mm,
Look, we'll soldier on in the middle and we'll reach an accommodation. And so let's keep the status quo. Now, I don't know if I explained myself too well, but I can see those are
yeah. I
rather than have
suppose.
maybe more trouble.
Mm.
They're all sort of not because they love it, but because of some sort of pragmatic politics.
Mm.
Let's move towards the center ground.
Well, people don't like to change as a rule, except they're pretty sure that the change is going to be a change for the better. But I have a feeling that the way if you have a border poll, I have a feeling, and I suppose it was one, I have a feeling they will let people know in advance that if it's passed, that the change towards a United Ireland will be a gradual thing. So that
Yeah.
over a period of 5 years, you'll have certain unity of state. Another 10 years, you'll have, 2/3 completed, and over 15 years, maybe final completion of United Ireland. I think a lot of people would go for that who might be fearful of, a big bang theory, as it were, if that's not
Rapid change.
misleading,
Yeah.
and rapidly changing. Um, Anyway, it's good news for those of us who are nationalists and Republicans. I'm a bit disappointed, I suppose, at the back of my mind that people would say, "Oh well, I'm all right, Jack." Don't people have? Maybe I'm being too idealistic, but surely people have. You certainly want to provide for yourself and your family or whatever. But surely there
Yeah.
is a dimension of you that is a community dimension or a national dimension, and that you would act in the interests of what you believe is your country or your region. Is that too
That
high-minded, Pat?
no, you've been very high-minded there. I think a lot of people these days, Jude, I get the impression a lot of people this whole idea of patriotism or what it's the pound in their pocket. What was somebody said they were loyal to the crown, but they were more loyal to the half crown. I think
Well,
it works in both communities.
well, yeah, that's true. But I'll tell you something, Pat. Talking to people from the and you would know quite a number of them yourself, I'm sure. Talking to people from the Foreign Affairs Department in the South, you did feel
Mm.
that at least some of them got involved in that because they really wanted to do something for their country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you
Yeah,
think,
I
or
have
do you
no
think
doubt
it was
about that.
just going in to get a job?
No, no, there are a lot of them. Oh no, Jude, I'm not dismissing it. Far from it. I know, Jude. I had me one of the main topics these days, regularly everywhere I go, is this whole idea of where we go from here. And everybody's aware that the demographics have changed. Everybody's aware. Like Jude, I'm getting reverting to it again, but know that the reaction last week, believe, of the unionists to Joe Biden was totally telling. Absolutely, total. It was so over the top, so gratuitously insulting. Even Arlene Foster has doubled down on it again. She says the biggest threat to peace in the North is meddling American politicians and our progress and all that. And you sort of go, Jude, wait a minute. Here's a man who came over here. By the way, let's repeat this. Joe Biden did not at any stage say anything anti-Brit or
Ah,
anti-unionist. All
uh-huh.
he did was, sort of beat his chest about being Irish. Like he's entitled to be proud of being Irish. That's his heritage, and so on. And he says himself, he's visited Ireland now, is it 4 or 5 times, and he feels really at home here.
Yeah, yeah,
Feels it.
yeah.
But anyway, but the more important point, he says, or he dangled the prospect that if everything got sorted here, that there could be 6 billion investment. But what do the unions do? They sort of insult him gratuitously by he hates the UK. He's a Provo Joe go home, all
Uh-huh.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think that speaks of desperation. When people
That's
are
what I'm reading
cornered,
into it as
they
well.
tend to lash out a bit. So I have a feeling
Yeah.
that's it. Okay, let's leave that for a second and move on to something even darker, which is one Freddie Scappaticci, who died during the week. I think the past week. Now he led, as everybody knows, the I think it was called the Nutting Squad for the IRA.
Yeah.
That is, they sought out what they believed were informers, very often tortured them and then killed them. Um, now, you quote from Richard O'Raw, I think it is,
Yeah.
and what was it he said about this?
Ricky O'Raw by the way, I think is he a lecturer these days, and he's an author, but he's a former IRA man.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, everybody's pointing the finger. He says, the IRA did not run Freddie Scappaticci. British intelligence ran Freddie Scappaticci. And he says, during Freddie's career, they murdered at least 34 people. And he says, British intelligence decided who lived and who died. I presume what he's trying to say is that uh, if they saw somebody that they wanted out of the way, they would claim he was an informer, and Freddie would inform the boys. I know he was the inside guy, the head of the nutting squad, seeking out. They were what do you call during the French Revolution, the guy who used to seek out traitors and so on. Well, Freddie was the guy who was in charge of internal intelligence and
Mm-hmm.
IRA. So over the course of his career, apparently 34 people died. Now they're now working on the premises. Half of those were total. At least half of them were totally, completely, sacrificial lambs, etc., etc.
Oh,
So morally, O'Raw's making the point: don't point the finger at the IRA, point the finger at British intelligence. And Jude, final point on this: you can see why they want to shut down the whole thing about legacy inquests and inquiries,
oh yeah.
because of that stuff came out that they were actually responsible for at
Mm-hmm.
least 34 innocent people being taken off the streets by dirty deeds during a dirty war by British intelligence. It won't come out very good. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a banana republic in the South America.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I mean, if he was being run by them, then he was taking decisions that would be suitable to his masters, his British masters. But surely the rest of the IRA weren't sitting on their hands during this time. And I mean, he was operating over a period of decades. Surely, I
Yeah.
mean, there were some pretty shrewd guys, I would say, in the IRA. Would none of them ever had a doubt about what was going on here?
See, you don't, should see in a secret organization. I see. I don't know the inner workings, and you would think somebody should have said, "Wait a minute, there's something suspicious here."
I would have
But
thought
hey,
there would be hyper
you
alert.
just but here's the point, Jude. He he did have a long career as a British informer.
Hmm.
He was described by one security chief as the jewel in the crown, and
Yeah.
he was up at the high level. Now, I remember being told McGuinness. The only ever conversation I ever heard about it is McGuinness never liked him, but I don't know what that dislike was based on, and
Hmm.
whatever, and what had
Hmm.
very little to do with him. Now, I don't know what the
Hmm.
background to that was. That's the only conversation, the only So, but if Martin and McGuinness and other people are supposed to be senior leaders in the IRA, you'd have think they would have known something about Scappaticci, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. You would. I must say it's a terrible thing to conclude, but my belief in Scappaticci's guilt was obvious from the very first moment when he came into. Remember the interview he gave? He gave,
Aye.
and was it Anne Cadwallader was there, and she shook hands with him, I think, to calm
Yeah.
him down. She said, and some people thought she should not have done that, but I thought, looking at Scappaticci, then it seemed to me that here is a man who knows that he's in mortal danger, who knows that
Aye.
his past has caught up with him. So almost on the
Aye.
spot, I mean, totally unfair, but I just was convinced that the guy was guilty of the things that people
Yeah.
were
I
charging him with.
remember he had on a sort of clothes that were thrown together. He
Yeah.
hadn't shaved. He
Mm-hmm.
looked, what do you call it, evasive, and actually came across
Oh,
as
I
evasive.
mean,
And
he
sure,
looked
he
under the.
disappeared a couple of weeks later. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is I wonder. Well, you see, he killed. We're told they killed at least 34 people, but of course, yeah, that would be the case. I
That's
remember.
that's that's what Ricky Ross says. I don't know whether that's true or not. Of
Yeah,
course, I
well,
don't.
but a reasonable number anyway. But I do remember there's a clip of a film of Martin McGuinness when he was quite young, being asked by some a report or something about people who are informers and the penalty for it. And McGuinness replies, yes, death, certainly. Death, that is the penalty for
I,
informers.
I stood up, Jude, and even years later, he said, after a particular instance, one of the certain person had been shot dead. He says, Pat, look, wait a minute. He says, this is not a game. He says, the one thing he says, when you join the IRA, he says it's stressed every which way. So, that if you inform and they're found out to inform, the penalty is death. And he says, the reason for that is because he says, you're putting other people's lives on the line when you inform on them,
Right.
because then their lives are no, they're usually
Yeah.
shot dead or whatever. So
Yeah.
he said that's he says it's a tough game, but he said if you can't deal with that when you're joining the IRA,
Yeah.
don't join the IRA.
Yeah. But you see, I think that's quite important in judging Scapatici. I don't know. And any reports I've seen so far don't seem to make it very clear to what extent some of these people were genuine informers and who met a
Yeah, well,
pretty
no, that's
grisly
unclear.
fate, which is a different matter from picking out. And in any case, I was wondering, what would be the point? What is the point? Why would the British state encourage Scapatici to point the finger at people who weren't guilty? I mean, were they getting him to pick out people that might have been a vital cog in the IRA machine and
Yeah,
want
that's what
them done away with?
or one of the things they remember the RT the Unquiet Graves program.
Yeah.
There was a pattern. They didn't shoot IRA men, but they shot members of their family, or their cousin or someone deliberately. It was to sort of bring that whole thing, the guilt and the way the Germans didn't shoot them, and they shot his son, so
Mm,
they'd live with the sort of the pain
mm,
of it.
mm,
That's right. So,
mm.
should like what you would need to go through each individual person who was shot and say, like, what was the point of there? Were they an informer? Were they a cog in the wheel? Was it to
Yeah.
send a message to somebody else? I don't know, Jude. There's 30.
Yeah.
According to Ricky O'Raw, there was Scapatici. He says that the Nutton unit was not run by the IRA; it was run by British intelligence, and
Mm,
the 34 people at least disappeared. And he says that's on the head of the intelligence unit, not the IRA, and
mhm,
that's where the investigation should go.
mhm.
And he's
Well,
probably got a point.
it has a point. I still think the IRA would be fairly involved in a sense. I don't believe
Oh,
that,
absolutely. No,
it
you
wouldn't be
can't.
a
No,
clean
no
thing
one's
to
saying
believe it.
the IRA is was
Mm,
blameless in this.
mm.
But the O'Raw's point is, Freddie's Capitici was the head of the Nutton squad. Freddie Cap is without question an informer. Without question, he's been run by British intelligence.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
provided a home for him in England, where
yeah.
he died. So we take it as read. All that is factually correct.
Here's a final question on this, and then we'll go to something else, Pat. What, apart from getting information, what were the British hoping to achieve by running Scapatici?
Well, I presume information. Like, if he's running around in the upper echelons of the IRA, I
Hmm.
presume it gives them direct access. Dude, I heard today, like, one of the criminal court cases down south, that the Gardaí broke in and put in listening devices into a suspect's car, and they were able to monitor their conversations and all that. If you know what your opponent's doing, and
Yeah,
suddenly
yeah, 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 yeah. The information war. Yeah, I know what you mean.
information war
Uh,
exactly.
that's
So
fair
I
enough.
presume Scapatici went along. By the way, Jude, just to finish on the point, like I knew of a guy who was done for apparently he had a big reputation as a ladies' man, but the cops or the FRU or British intelligence, whatever, discovered he was having a gay relationship, so
Hmm.
he was compromised. There was another guy, I think, was it Dennis Donaldson?
Yes,
They
yes.
found out he had got himself into some difficulties, and
Hmm.
they were able to sort of turn him on the basis of his private life.
Well, as I understand it, most of them, that's how it happened. They would
Yeah,
investigate the guy's life, and there's very few people who don't have something to hide, and some who've got
yeah,
lots to
exactly. Yeah,
hide.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
use that. They say, "I'll tell your wife, or I'll tell your brother, or whatever," and your life
yeah.
will be ruined. So you have a choice:
Right.
just do this wee job for us, and leave it at that,
Uh,
or else we'll tell. So of course the guy
uh,
goes along with it, and then it snowballs after that. Uh,
uh,
it's a sad case. Another thing surprised me a little bit was why Scapatici, you know, why did the IRA not kill him when they found out? I mean, they knew it. So was it that things? What year was it Scapitici was made public or was revealed? I wonder.
Somewhere in the 90s.
Was it now? Was it before the Good Friday Agreement?
No, I can't remember, Jude.
I can't
But
either.
apparently, I think there's some claim that he was too big to fail, that he knew too much, that if
Hmm.
anybody came after him, he was going to tell a lot of stories. So maybe they
Yeah.
erase it, and no, better inside the tent pissing out than outside pissing in. If you know what I
Aye,
mean?
but once he was outed,
Yeah,
what I'm saying is I'm sort of surprised that the IRA didn't have him killed.
yeah,
Because they did attempt to take the life off, and I think they took the life of one or two previous informers who were living, haunted lives as a result of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
having.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, it's a sort of a sad thing because you can
Oh,
see how
no,
human beings.
it's not that it's a sort of what would you say, a relic of the dirty war, and it's still with us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's war. That's war for you. Okay, thanks be to God, we're not having war at present. But let's move on to the next session or section. Brexit. I have a piece here about Michelle O'Neill, who has an article in the Irish Times today. I think it's today, or maybe it was yesterday. And she talks about how Brexit was forced on the North.
Yeah,
And we know what we mean by that, that 56% of people here voted in the North voted for staying in the EU, and yet despite that, they were dragged out. That's true, but it's also what unionists also say is true, and that is that it was undeniably a UK-wide vote. So, I mean,
yeah,
can you imagine if the British had set it up so they said, well, we'll allow the north of Ireland, we'll allow Scotland, we'll allow Wales, they can make their own decision depending on the majority of the vote. I mean,
yeah,
that would really be a recipe for the end of the UK. So
yeah. I
it
accept
was a
that. Yeah,
UK-wide vote, whether we like it or not.
uh,
So
yeah.
I just think we should keep that in mind whenever they're
But right,
right.
hold on, Jude. No, it's not quite as simple. 56% of the people of Northern Ireland, or the six counties, or North East Ireland, as you call it, voted to remain. Well, the DUP went along to Westminster and did not at any stage reflect the wishes of the people here. They went for the hardest possible
Ah,
Brexit, and they supported the British government. So they did not reflect democracy here,
yeah.
and they succeeded.
Mm.
Jude, and it's very hard. And the way the Bible sort of says you should turn the other cheek. I find it very hard to turn the other cheek when I hear lectures from the likes of Arlene Foster now to Joe Biden and all. Jude, the original sin of all our troubles right now in regard the relationship between London or Westminster and EU is down to breakfast. The bad relationship between Belfast and Dublin is down to Brexit. The bad relationship between Dublin and London is down to Brexit, and the bad relationship between London and Washington is down to Brexit. The original sin of everything that's gone on, and
Mm.
the reason Stormont isn't sitting is guess what? Down to Brexit.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's also very obvious that there's all sorts of people who want to muddy that ground. They say, oh, well, don't, the pandemic, that's the reason for the problems we're having.
Toss bollocks.
It's other things than that, it's inflation. That's what's doing it. It's inflation. It's, the Brexit's only a minor thing. Brexit is the very foundation, the cornerstone of everything that's happening to Britain at present, in my view. Here's a question, though. Why did the Tories, and why did the DUP prompt the Tories to go after a hard border? I mean, were they not, would they not know that that would hasten the day when people, nationalists, Republicans, would say, you're going to try to cut us off from the rest of Ireland and go back to the 1950s. Forget it. I think that a backlash against that would be so severe that only somebody very stupid would. What do they hope to gain by having a hard border?
You've sort of stupidity is the word. Incompetence also comes to mind. The
That's just.
DUP, the way sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. All they wanted was, the strand two, the north south of the agreement, Hume's famous three strands. The whole Good Friday Agreement was predicated on internal north south and east west. The strand two of the agreement is predicated totally on the north and the south being inside the EU. So it
Mm.
all different, all the rules and regulations would flow both ways. Once Brexit came along, there was going to be a divergence, and they thought we will go back to the border like it had been like the Atlantic Ocean, and we're going to be back inside the enveloped arms of the British establishment, where we can go back to being top dogs and whatever, whatever, whatever. And I think all they saw was this sort of land of milk and honey that they thought they could go back to. They didn't think it through.
God, they're enormously silly. I mean, enormously silly. You only had to talk to people on the border, border communities against Brexit. They were flagging up the fact that this wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to have a hard border.
No,
I honestly
no,
think it would have radicalized hundreds, if not thousands, of people along the border, let alone people who lived, were of that mind in the north or further down in the south. But certainly talking to people in the border communities, guys who were, I suppose, what you'd call aspiring middle class, or
yeah.
good, hardworking, and successful farmers or businessmen. By God, they weren't going to accept it if a hard border was imposed through Brexit.
The places like West Belfast and even Shankill Road and up on the Craigan and the Bogside and Derry, there are lots and lots of community groups have got their funding cut by at least half, sometimes some more. From that, as the British government, when the Brexit happened, made this promise that they would replicate EU funding for all community groups and social funds and all the rest of it. Jude, the last day there, I think most of the community groups discovered that their funding has been cut by at least 50%. Now, Jude, look in places like Cregan, one of the most deprived areas in the British Isles. There was massive unemployment. It's a huge, big housing estate. If there's no services, remember those famous pictures of the young fellas burning the barricade and the stuff on Easter Monday,
Yeah,
and that went all around the world. But there is a background to that. Hey, Jude, see, 13 years of Tory austerity has taken our communities way back. That's why the re-emergence of the hard men and the paramilitaries, because Jude, when you've got people sitting around with nothing to do, no jobs, no prospects, no services, right? Breeding ground for disenchantment and for people who can come and whisper in their ears.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, we've just a couple of minutes left, and I was going to go on to something else, but I want to ask you this. Have you seen this new series set in Belfast police thing, Blue? I think it's either Blue Lines or Blue.
Blue Days. No, I started to watch it one night and I thought, do I want to watch another program upset about cops in Belfast? But our mutual friend Garvin Downey mentioned it. He said I think what he's suggesting was there's a bit of stereotyping going on, but I'm putting words in his mouth. I'm not sure. I haven't watched it. Why do you ask?
Because I resisted it for quite a while. Like you, I thought of another series set in bloody Belfast. And unlike you, I never quite could get the Dairy Girls. I thought it was too forced. But I held off because I'm prejudiced from Blue Lines. I have watched a couple episodes now, and actually I think it's very good.
Uh,
Let me rephrase that. Good to very good. I just
yeah,
finished watching. I was a late convert to Happy Valley, which when I got into it,
yeah,
I thought it was excellent. And I thought, oh God, there's no way it'll be a pale imitation if they try to set that in Belfast. And to some extent, it is overshadowed by Happy Valley, but it still is pretty good, pretty damn good, I thought. The
yeah,
one thing I would say is this: it's the story of cops in the PSNI, and I never thought of this when it was the cops in West Yorkshire in Happy Valley.
mm,
But the whole story is told from the point of view of people within the PSNI, so that
yeah,
anybody outside essentially is very often their opponent.
yeah.
How can I say this? In a sense, this is a work of soft propaganda.
Yeah.
Is that
Do you
is that
remember
it?
the old one about the miners' strike? The miners lost the war because the BBC cameras were behind the police, and all the people
Yeah.
saw was like
Good point.
I remember, was it Orgreave? They said that was the defining moment, but that was outright propaganda.
Uh,
Because had it been on the other side, you would have seen the police charging with their horses and
yeah,
battling
yeah.
totally innocent, unarmed people.
Okay, we're really out of time, but yeah, my point would be that it might be unintentional, but the fact is it does enhance the position of the PSNI. Pat, thanks very much. We'll talk to you.